Hey, Bayek, it's me, and in today's video, well, it's another one from Hammer. It is The Damned from 1961. The US release was These Are the Damned. It didn't get a release in this country, though it's 1961, until 1963, and was a double bill with Maniac. And in America, it didn't get a release till 1965. It's 95 minutes long, but the US was cut to 77 minutes. Rotten Tomato give it 88%, and I think that is quite generous. It is. It definitely deserves it, definitely. The critics now would agree that this is a great film. It's something very special from Hammer. So we've effectively got all these genres all come together, including, you could even say, an art house aspect to this film. Let's get into it. The screenplay is by Evan Jones. Evan Jones was brought in by the director, Joseph Losey. He'd worked with him before. I trusted him because Losey, when he was working, would also be developing the scripts as well when he's filming. It's just the way he works, and that's how it was. Very different, maybe, to Hammer, though Terence Fisher was known to be working on scripts when he was doing his Gothic work. Now, it's based on a 1960 novel, The Children of Light by H.L. Lawrence. Never heard of him, but it was one of these pulpy novels, sci-fi novel, and that's how it was portrayed. It's produced by stalwarts of Hammer, Michael Carreras, Anthony Hines, Anthony Nelson Keys. And, of course, let's talk about the director. It's directed by Joseph Losey. Losey was just considered, well, a very interesting director. One who was exiled, you could say, had come to live in this country because he was on the American blacklist from the McCarthy era. He had films going back to the 1940s, fallen foul of all that, and came over here to develop a career, and certainly did develop a career, because he was particularly seen by the French, who really saw him as an auteur, which is interesting as a director who controls and has certain ways of working and what he's trying to convey in his films. The French loved him, and as we saw, The Servant, 1963, his work with Harold Pinter, we had, as I say, The Servant, and then we had Accident, and Go Between, that's 1971. Accident, I think, was 1967. He had these three films where he worked with Harold Pinter, and they was huge. The French absolutely loved him, and then it got to here. It's seen as an art house, you could say, director, and he became loved here as well. Modesty Blaze, I forgot about that. That's another film he did, not with Harold Pinter, I don't think, but he might have done. I don't know everything, but yeah, he has a good record. Anyhow, so he was the director, and that makes it interesting straight away. The music was by James Bernard. So we've got this interesting song right at the beginning, which is kind of a rock and roll song. Even though they call them Teddy Boys, they're actually a biker gang, aren't they? We haven't quite got into the sort of mods and rockers era. It's just before that with Brighton and all that sort of stuff, but no. Anyhow, let's get into the cast. MacDonald Carey plays Simon Wells. He's a very interesting actor as well. He was in Hitchcock's Shadow of Doubt, 1943. He was in The Devil's Angel, 1962, which is a horror film with Christopher Lee in. He made his real name, I suppose, in TV, in this soap, Days of Our Lives, 1965 to 2000. He died in 1994. He was a lead part of that, so he's got a TV. It's an interesting choice as an actor in this film. You're never quite sure about him. It's interesting, especially with the relationship with the next actress, which is Shirley Anfield, who plays Joan. She has a wonderful career. Films that pop out straight away. Peeping Tom, 1960. The Entertainer, 1960 as well. Saturday Night, Sunday Morning, 1960. Great set of films. Alfie, she was in that, 1961. Lots of TV work. Great, well respected. And great career. And she plays got this younger character. And that's what I mean. There's kind of this strange, because he's an older character. There's, it's a very strange sort of thing. But it's all in there anyway. Then we have a very interesting actor. Now, I'm sorry about my pronunciations here. I would say it's Viveka Lindorfs. She plays Freya Nielsen, who is a sculptor. And we have, in this film, the sculptures are there. A major part, Losi insisted, from this sculptor, Elizabeth Frink. And these sculptures are really kind of weird and outstanding and add a bit more depth and imagery to the film. The sculptures look like they're sort of being burnt or certainly distorted, which would suggest sort of a catastrophe. They have this weirdness, a nuclear catastrophe, yes. That is there. It's there in the sculptures. They're very strange, yes. Then we've got Viveka Lindorff is a Swedish actress. She goes back to the 1940s. Lots of work. Never real major big roles, but she was there. Then we've got Alexander Knox, who plays Bernard. He's a very important character as well to this. Alexander Knox was chosen definitely by Losi as his favourite actors. He received an Oscar nomination in 1944 for a film called Wilson. He was in Modesty Blaze, 1966, which is a Losi film directed. Also, just a bit of interest, it was in Puppet on a Chain, 1971, the Alison McLean story, which I really love. Yes. Then we've got Oliver Reed playing King. Oliver Reed is just an outstanding actor. I love just seeing him. And he's really getting now to the top, because he's going to do The Curse of the Werewolf, 1961, which really elevates him right into the Hammer thing. He's been doing lots of small roles, and he still continues to some extent doing these roles, but that gave him a lot of recognition, and he just builds up his career over decades. What an actor he was. He was in like Captain Clegg, 1962, Paranoiac, 1963, and then other films that you sort of well known, like Oliver. It was brilliant in Oliver, 1968. Women in Love, 1969. I could go on and on. I won't go on too much. He's a great actor. His last film was Gladiator, which he didn't finish because sadly he died. That was in 2000. That was a Ridley Scott film. Then we've got Walter Gottrell playing Major Holland. Now, he's a recognisable face. Well, if you're a James Bond film, you'll immediately know why. He was in From Russia with Love, 1963, but then his real character that got him into Bond, The Spy Who Loved Me, 1977, Moonraker, 1979, For Your Eyes Only, 1981, Octopussy, 1983, A View to Kill, 1985, and The Living Daylights, 1987. He played like the head of the KGB. What a role! Yes, he's a very recognisable face. Then we've got James Villiers playing Captain Gregory. Again, he's a face. You thought, oh, I recognise his face. He was in Repulsion, classic film, 1965. But from a Hammer viewpoint, he was in The Nanny. Wonderful in The Nanny. This upper class kind of part. Nanny, 1965. What a film. Then he was in Asylum. Yes, that wonderful Amicus anthology film, 1972. Absolutely wonderful. So the film, it was filmed at Bray Studios, but as I say, the location is so important in this film. And that is at Weymouth. There's quite a lot there. And then the Isle of Portland. All this is important. It adds so much to the film, seeing all this location work. Now, what is this film about? You could say it's about, you could go on and on what it's about. Just, it starts with this visiting American, Simon Wells, his name is, of course, that's MacDonald Gary's character, who comes into contact with this motorcycle gang. They call them Teddy Boys, but they're not Teddy. The motorcycle gang. And that's led by Oliver Reed playing Pat King. Notice King, he's the king. And his sister, Joan, the American guy quite likes. But it looks a bit funny because also there's this, he's much older and she is, she's quite young. You notice that, but his acting is very interesting. I don't know, I find his acting very interesting anyhow. Now, in this, we see these other characters. We see the sculptress, Freya Nielsen, played by Viveka Lindorf. And she clearly has had a past relationship with this military character who's very secretive. We know he's quite well in the military and government connections. His name is Bernard. And they're having tea on the seafront like you do. And then he's surrounded by these other military types, Major Holland and Captain Gregory. And then you see this and you start thinking, what are they doing here? Why are they in this film? And then the film starts to develop a bit more. You're getting kind of an action feel to the film. And then it switches into this sci-fi. All of a sudden we get these sci-fi aspects. And then the sci-fi becomes really dark and quite horrific. And it all comes together. And particularly in the second half of the film, you notice this switch. It's a massive switch from where we started. It really is. Incredible switch. And this is all part of Losey's vision because he's got certain messages. Hammer have never been a message kind of company, as we knew. We saw them in Never Take Sweets from a Stranger, and that wasn't seen as a good thing in terms of messaging and what they were doing. And this film is clearly very anti-nuclear war. Yes, it's an anti-war film. Yes. Because at that time, there was a clear feeling that the world was getting to the brink, with the coming of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Cold War, the post-war country was, we were there in this, and the thing is, it's in 1960, and in Britain, there's a lot of changes coming from that post-war period, particularly that people don't like the changes that are coming, mixed in with all this anti-nuclear stuff. You've got the beatnik generation after the rock and roll starting to come in. You've got this class thing, which Losey loves looking at, the class thing, and we see that in the biker gang. Notice the leader's called King, because he's like the leader, and he's in the sort of working class. And then you've got Bernard representing, the upper class who've got their values, who don't like what's happening. They're seeing all this increasing violence as they see it amongst a youth that needs to be sorted out, needs to be controlled. Their old values are disappearing. They're disappearing, the old values, and it's all coming. We know it's coming. With the whole explosion in the '60s of what happens. It's an amazing period in time, and this film is showing that. And Losey has his agenda as a director, but the thing about Losey is he has these like certain messages, but he often does it through symbolism. He also uses various techniques in his direction, and it's wonderful. It's just a wonderful film to watch. And of course, the children involved in this are really good. I don't want to give too much away because you want to know about this about children. There's a certain aspect that, and you'll think, oh, Children of the Damned, 1968, but British sci-fi. It's not the American sci-fi where everything's bright coloured, because this film as well, which I should mention, is in black and white. It has to be in black and white. British sci-fi is a lot bleaker, as we saw even with the Quatermass experiment and all that. It's very different to the American sci-fi, and this is with a more art house look at it as well. You've got that mixture. You see, you're wondering, how did this hybrid happen? You've got an auto director and you've got Hammer, who run things in their own particular way. They have certain ways of filming. Well, this director also has his values. It's very interesting mix. How it happened and how they produced it. And then, of course, they went over budget with this film, but they managed that. And, of course, the film was a flop. It wasn't a big success at all. It's only in later years that this film has been recognised as a great film for what it is, and it is absolutely fantastic film. I'm blown away by it. I love it because I've done reviews, and the Servant, I absolutely adore The Servant, which he went on to direct 2 years later, 1963, wasn't it? The Servant came out. So wonderful film. But to think that a Hammer film could get all this in, it's amazing. It's amazing how all these messages, and the influence you can see on the films. As I say, I saw the biker gang, and I immediately thought of Clockwork Orange. You can see that. Quadrophenia, of course, when we see the mods and rockers, you see it in films. And Kubrick, of course, also directed Dr. Strangelove, which was a very much of this period as well, about the threat of nuclear war. Amazing how everything, you start to see all sorts of things. Yes, it's a film I don't want to go on too long because I can go on far too long, and I better not go on too much longer. All I'd say is this film, you should really, it's an important film, I think. It's a British film now, we can say this, and it's a Hammer film. And have a look at the extras on here. Here is, look at that cover. What would you say that film is about then? You would say, hey, it's a biker film. Complete contrast to one that we've had up, the American one. And look at all this. I watched these extras. I reckon the extras are longer than the film. Really, it's just absolutely amazing. And there's even an interview with Losey's son on here, and he gives wonderful insight into Losey and his thoughts, and wonderful. But there's so many great interviews and perspectives on this film. It's a film that you can just talk about, and the bleak ending, is just incredible, and it leaves you thinking about it, and it's not the gothic horror where it all comes right and everything's good and in the end. No, it isn't. Yeah, no, it's very bleak, but it is definitely worth exploring this film. I highly recommend this film. I just can't talk about it enough, but I better shut up, hadn't I? Now, I'm sorry. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Then I'll let you know when I produce these videos. Also, if you like this video, please give it a like, because it helps with algorithms, and more people then might get to like my videos. Or perhaps they won't. Perhaps they won't. I don't know. But it all costs note. You can't say better than that, can you? You can't. It costs note. And if you've got any comments, honestly, I love to read your comments. I love films like this. Make me so passionate about films. I love, I love finding new films like this. It's wonderful. It's exciting. Oh, yes. And that's it. That's it. I'm done. I'm done, as they say. So all I've got to say is, I'll see thee again.